All right, perfect. Well, welcome to Reducing Workers' Comp Costs. And I'm Nathan Glass. I'm co-founder of Utopia Risk Solutions. And over the past decade, I've been helping both mom and pop businesses as well as multi-million-dollar corporations throughout their insurance and risk management programs. And what we found is that we oftentimes see that starting with workers' comp has a few different impacts. First of all, you're dealing with the lifeblood of your organization, your people. And for right now, robots don't control companies. And so having that impact on the lifeblood of your organization actually goes a long way. Second of all, is that not only does it impact us, the hard costs of your organization, but it also impacts the soft costs as well. And according to the Bureau of Labor and Statistics, a workers' comp claim can have anywhere from a 2 to a 6 times impact of the hard costs on the actual soft costs of the organization. So if you have a claim and it pays out $10,000, that's actually a $20,000 to $60,000 impact on the soft aspect of your organization. And so having both impacts is significant when we've actually seen it in the workplace. And then the third and final reason is that we actually see that this is a really good starting block that then bleeds into the other areas of risk management in an organization. And so why even listen to me in the first place? And I actually tell people, don't just listen to me blindly, think about it. Because just like we're not for everybody, this advice is not for everybody. And we're going to go through some people where it actually is not a good resource and a good piece of advice for. And so we're going to talk about that. So just listen to it, see how it might impact your organization. And then if there are 1 or 2 areas that you can start implementing sooner rather than later, and we might have some free resources for you at the end to help you along in that process and get that process started. So what are we going to be talking about today? First of all, we're going to be talking about our approach. And there are 3 aspects to that approach. There's, first of all, the prevention, then the insurance, and containment. And then, like I mentioned, there are going to be some resources that we have for you at the end. So what does a typical insurance cycle look like? You have the insurance, and everybody starts with the insurance. And if something actually happens, then they try to contain it. And then the renewal comes up again, and they insure their risk, and then they contain and insure. Now, unfortunately, this is a vicious cycle that doesn't really improve over time because you're not dealing with the root cause of the situation. And I was actually joking with a colleague, there's even a step before this where it's just insurance. And so I'm guessing if you're on this webinar, watching this webinar, that's not you. There's probably some sort of containment after those claims happen. But that, unfortunately, is not going to solve your problem. And the reason being is that you're not actually preventing anything. And that's why we start with the prevention piece first and foremost, because that allows us to insure fewer things and save costs on the insurance aspect because we prevent more things from happening in the first place. And then if something happens, then we do contain it. But that containment then informs us what we need to prevent next time. So if something happened, we need to know, okay, this thing happened, it got through our prevention screens, and so what do we need to do in order to prevent it next time? So there's a few different things that we do. The first one is we need to start with the commitment and the culture of proper risk management. And there was an organization, a nonprofit company up in the Pacific Northwest that I was brought in by one of the board members to kind of take a look at. And it's 250 employees and does some great work in the community. The issue was that many members of the board, unfortunately, did not take risk management seriously. They just didn't. And even though they had multiple lawsuits on their hands at the time when I was brought in to talk to them, they just didn't see that as the problem. And so they were looking elsewhere as possible problems, but not when it came to the risk management aspect. So unfortunately, I had to tell them, if you're not going to commit to making changes in this area, unfortunately, nothing that I'm going to tell you is going to make any impact at all. It doesn't matter what kind of, exercise regimen a trainer puts you on. If you're eating nothing but cheeseburgers and candy and French fries at the end of the day, it doesn't matter. You're not committed to losing the weight and improving your fitness. And same thing when it comes to the risk management world. If you're not going to commit to it, there's no point in following through on anything else. So not to say that an organization needs to be 100% all set, ready to go ahead of time. We work with a lot of organizations where they know they have a problem, but they're wanting to fix it. And so that is 100% a great place to start, because once you realize you have a problem and that you need to fix it and you're committed to fixing it, then we can start putting the processes in place and make a major impact on the organization. So once we have that commitment, then we start looking at the baseline risk assessment. What we do is we actually have a conversation with many different levels of the organization to figure out where those risks are. And then what we do is we accumulate a list, and then we rank them based on importance and impact. From there, what we'll do is we'll typically look at just a few different areas of major impact, anywhere from 3 to 5, and develop our risk management action plan from there. Usually one of those first things is functional risk management. This is the 20% of the time that gets you 80% of the results, because these are the easy things to do that anybody can do. If you walk by an electrical box and it's open, or there's a puddle on the floor that's a slipping hazard, or the emergency exit is blocked, or all these different little things that oftentimes we just don't really think about, are really easy to fix at the end of the day. And so there's a simple checklist you can go through, and normally we start there because that's the low-hanging fruit that we get to pick right away. Along with that, we'll also see if there are any areas of major impact. So that's where we bring in specialized loss control. Some brokerages and agencies, the way they handle this is they have an internal person, and that's totally fine. We've decided to go a slightly different route, where we actually have a network of specialists in many different areas. And so if we need to bring somebody in to do an ergonomic study, we bring in the top person in the area to do that ergonomic study. Or if we need to do mock OSHA inspections, we have a top person that is specializing in doing that. And so we found by bringing in these individual specialists, as opposed to maintaining somebody on our staff, we're able to bring in that best-in-class solution for that organization and make a larger impact at the end of the day. And then lastly is incident and claims reporting. And this is really what helps inform us in terms of what we need to do next and what areas we can have most impact on. Oftentimes we'll look at OSHA logs if the company's of the right size. So for most industries, for many industries at least, if you have 20 or more employees, you're required to maintain OSHA logs. And so many companies will take this and kind of look at it as a government mandated thing and not put in a lot of time or resources into it. And even if they do put in the right amount of time and resources, they don't actually look at the results and analyze that data that's available. And unfortunately, it's just such a big missed opportunity, because what that does is, especially on the incident side of things, it helps inform you what things are really close to tipping that edge, turning it into a claim. And if it's just a lot of small claims, what could possibly turn into a large claim? And that allows us to avoid it and go through those prevention steps in the first place so that we can eliminate that particular risk, or at least minimize it. So once we go through the prevention aspect of it, we need to do the insurance portion. And I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this because the way our industry works, everybody's pushing the insurance piece of it. That's because that's what you need at the end of the day for contracts, for everything, you need that insurance piece. And so we push that as an industry. And there's, obviously a very good place, a place for the insurance piece, but that's what everybody's talking about. And so obviously we're going to go through, we're going to make sure the coverages are correct and do all the due diligence from the insurance policy piece. But what's not always incorporated as much is something like the audits. So on the work comp side of things, if you have your work comp integrated with your payroll or using a pay as you go, the audit at the end of the year might not be so much you had significantly more, significantly less in payroll than you estimated at the beginning of the year. However, there are instances where audits can come back and bite you in the butt. One of those instances, so we had a company where they made the containers for blueberries, strawberries, stuff like that. And they noticed that there weren't a lot of companies out there making the labels, so they decided to start a company that made the labels as well. And they wanted to do everything under the same roof, but different companies, different employees, different everything. And so by bringing in an auditor ahead of time, where they got to take a look at everything and say, okay, in order to make sure that these two entities are not put together but are separated, this is what you need to do. And they gave us a few things to make sure that at the end of the day, that audit would pass the way that we anticipated it and not the other way around. What could have so easily happened if we didn't bring somebody in ahead of time is they would have said, okay, well, what we're going to do is actually these two are too closely aligned. We're going to put everything under one roof and everything is going to go to the higher rated class code. And that would have resulted in a significant audit at the end of the year. And that person would have had to write a very, very large check in order to pay off that audit. So preparing ahead of time, whether or not that's, if you're not on a pay as you go or integrated with payroll, by doing that calculation throughout the year to see how you are on pace with what you anticipated, and then preparing for that audit. We actually have some resources available to help you do that if necessary. And then the other piece that goes along with this is alternative risk management. And this piece is definitely not for everybody. You need to be of a certain size and a certain caliber in your risk management in order to get to this piece. Things like high deductible plans, self-insurance, or captives are pieces that we take a look at whenever applicable. And not only do you have to be of the right size, but you can't just be lucky. You need to be really good in your areas of risk management, because this is all of a sudden on you now. You are insuring yourself. And so those claims paid out aren't just a check from a company, that's out of your bank account. And so this can be extremely lucrative if done right, but we will always do a feasibility study to make sure that first, before you jump into this, that it is suitable for you. And so what we do for companies of appropriate size is we want to work towards this. And so that's kind of the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow, or the light at the end of the tunnel, for working through by putting in that effort from a risk management point of view to make sure that the payoff is there in the end. Now, we all know that things happen. Unfortunately, no matter how well you do on the prevention side of things, you will have claims. That's how it works, especially as you get larger. And so the first thing you need to do is make sure that your claims reporting process is put in place. And even if you haven't had a claim, especially like a work comp claim, for example, if you haven't had one, that doesn't mean you will never have one. And that actually having this piece in place, that system in place, is even more necessary because you're not used to it. And so if something happens, making sure you're following the right steps and a quick timeline can help save you at the end of the day. Actually, I don't know if it was a 2022 or a 2023 statistic that of all the employers across the country that submitted work comp claims, roughly 70% of those companies were first-time filers. And so that just shows that if nothing's happened, that doesn't mean nothing will ever happen. And so just having this piece in place, having that system and process written down and then easily accessible if anything happens is that first step you need to take. If you ever have somebody that does get injured, returning to work as quickly as possible can significantly save your company at the end of the day. And so what we do is out in most states, they actually have an incentive, if you will, for your work comp program. If you don't have any sort of loss of wages associated with that particular claim, if you keep it medical only, it has a significant reduction on its impact to your workers' comp policy moving forward. In California, they don't have that same particular system, but there are other significant benefits when it comes to having that return to work program in place. And so that's step number 2. Once you have your system in terms of claim filing, having your system when it comes to your return to work program. Now, hopefully you get it all buttoned up and taken care of and closed in a quick manner. However, sometimes that doesn't happen. And so claims management with those open claims is also something you need to take a look at. Depending on how frequent and how many claims clients have, we'll either review these on a monthly, quarterly, or annual basis. And to make sure that we are resolving these in a quick manner and negotiating those reserves down as much as possible so it minimizes the impact on the organization. And also kind of tied in with this is the company that's providing the medical care at the end of the day as well. We need to make sure that we're evaluating and negotiating with these medical providers to make sure that everything is getting taken care of quickly and in a cost-efficient manner. So that is the entire process, because from there, again, like I mentioned, it circles back to prevention. Everything that happens informs us on what we need to do moving forward. And that's where the risk management action plan comes in. It's when we sit down with a client and identify those 3 to 5 items that we want to address throughout the year. We want to put that on a calendar in terms of what we're going to do when. And that holds both of us accountable in getting things done, improving that aspect of the organization. And the reason we just keep it 3 to 5 is this area should not take up a significant amount of time in your organization. You know, if there's more resources to dedicate to it, fantastic, but you're running a business. And so this is meant to complement that and add to it and not take away from other things that you're doing. It may be a little more time intensive at first, the first year or two, but by putting the legwork in, then you have significantly more time moving forward. It's kind of like if you are used to exercising and putting any sort of exercise program in place, it seems like more of a time commitment at first, but then you have more energy and you have the ability to do more. And so you actually get more done at the end of the day. And so once we put that risk management action plan in place, at the end of the year, what we do is we review that plan. We see what worked, what didn't work, where we fell short, and we analyze that to help us inform us what we're going to do again, or what we're going to do moving forward for our next year's risk management action plan. Now, a lot of people will say, okay, this is fine, but isn't it just easier to just pay for the insurance and deal with problems as they arise? And I get that feedback. And so what we need to do is we need to actually be able to walk through the tangible results that you're going to see as an organization. And that starts with actually the account desirability in the marketplace. And what so many companies don't realize is that you think, you know, your insurance agent is selling you as the company and saying, okay, do business with us and, you know, utilize this carrier. And that's one half of the sale. What you don't realize, and what so many companies don't realize, is there's another half as well. And that other half is the broker selling your company to the carrier. And it's not so much relevant when we have what's called a soft market. So when carriers are just kind of, you know, taking as many new clients as they can at, you know, cut rates. It is, however, pivotal when you have a harder market. when carriers are saying, you know what, we want to actually offload clients, especially the ones that aren't as profitable, and we are extremely careful about who we're bringing on as a client. And so if you have all these processes in place, not only is that going to reduce your claims and make you a more profitable company to bring on as a client anyway, but it's also going to, if you do have a situation where maybe you had a shock loss, a large random claim, it's going to make your company much more palatable for that particular carrier, saying, okay, this is a one-off. This is not systematic. This is not an indication of this company actually just waiting to be unprofitable. But this is just a one-off, and we can trust that this company is going to be a good client for us moving forward. So that's first and foremost. Second of all is your experience modification factor. So this is an kind of a grade, if you will. So think about in school, you had your grade at the end of the semester. That's what your experience modification factor is. And all the work you do ahead of time from a claims point of view gives you your grade at that end of the semester. And so a lot of times what we'll do is we'll start working with a client, and they might be at say a 1.2. So that therefore what happens is you take the cost of that work comp policy, you multiply it by 1.2, and that gets you what you're actually paying at the end of the day. And so over time, what we'll be able to do is take that from a 1.2 to say a 0.7. And we're actually helping that company save, as much as 40% or more, honestly, in some cases, on their workers' comp costs. And so that is the hard cost that you see over time by having the right systems and processes in place. And then lastly, increase productivity and profit. This is a little more on the soft cost side of things that is harder to directly measure, but this is really what happens when you have a well-run organization from a risk management point of view. Lower downtime, which increases profits, and when you get to the point of being able to utilize one of those alternative risk management programs, that is where you see significant benefits from all the hard work. So there's a few tools that we utilize for our clients that we wanted to make available for you attending this webinar today. The first one is your functional risk assessment. Like I mentioned, this is that 20% that gets you 80% of the results, helps just take care of that low-hanging fruit. And so for any organization, you can, as an owner or head of the insurance program, you can go through this checklist, take care of those easy to handle aspects. The second thing is your risk management action plan. So once you've identified, hey, these are a few areas where we need to improve, the process throughout the year in order to make sure you're actually working to improve that is really what matters at the end of the day. It's one thing to say, hey, we need to change this. It's another to actually put in the work. And that's where the risk management action plan helps hold you accountable to improving those particular areas. Audit preparation, like I mentioned, is another aspect that so many companies have issues with. And so making sure you're just ready for that auditor before they come out can make things so much smoother. And then your return to work program. We actually have a step-by-step process to put this, to create this, and then put this in place so that if you actually have that person that does get injured, you have the process in place in order to get them back to work as soon as possible. And then finally, OSHA log software. So this is, again, only for companies that have 20 or more employees in particular industries. So this is a lot of industries, but not absolutely every single industry that has to file OSHA logs. But if you're one of those companies that does file OSHA logs and your broker is not helping you with this process, I equate it to having a personal CPA that doesn't help you file taxes. It's kind of like, what's the CPA value if they're not helping you on the tax side of things? Same thing with the insurance broker and OSHA logs. These two should be married and tied together. And so that's why we utilize this particular software to help inform us as agents when we're guiding our clients through their risk management process, but also from a company point of view, having just this easy to fill out software, one thing where you click a button at the end of the year and get that document filed, those documents filed by March 2nd every single year without the headache and everything that sometimes goes along with filling those out, makes life so much easier. So if you're one of those particular companies that falls into that bucket, we do have a 60-day free trial that is available. So feel free to reach out to us if you would like to get a trial of that particular software that we utilize. And that is it for us. So I included my email here, nathan@utopiarisk.com. So if you have any questions or you would like any guidance on any particular aspect of these, feel free to reach out and we'd be happy to help.